Grading beaver is a monumental task. For any given auction, there may be as many as 100,000 pelts. Given that each of these pelts may be handled as much as 8 times, and you get a feel for the enormity of the task faced by the graders. NAFA's beaver graders are highly skilled technicians whose job is to make collections of very uniform pelts. The key word is consistency. It is their job to assure the integrity of the grades. We as shippers often make the mistake of thinking that what we are striving for in putting up and presenting our pelts is to impress and influence the graders. And while this is true, and they will tell you how important the quality of handling is, the ones we also really need to impress are the buyers who actually pay for our pelts. In reality, the grader's job is to categorize the pelts for uniformity and consistency across all the pelts in that grade. The grader tells the buyers what is in each grade. Then the buyer looks at the grade and decides if it will meet his requirements. The buyers are the ones who really look at the quality of the product and how it's handled, and either are willing to pay for it or not. When the pelts arrive at the auction house, a series of numbered tags is generated that matches the number of pelts on the shipper's shipping receipt. This number is specific to each shipper, and his account and those numbers are verified with a count. Any discrepancies are noted in the receiving records and corrected. Each pelt has a tag attached with this individual ID number. It is what is used to track each pelt through the whole grading and sales process and to identify which shipper it belongs to. At this point, the beaver pelts are separated into 2 major sections, Eastern and Western. This is done by junior staff using where they came from as a guide. The dividing lines are between the Minnesota-North Dakota border, south from there, and the Ontario-Manitoba border in the north. As a broad general description, Eastern beaver are darker and heavier. Western beaver are paler in color and a little lighter in weight. These 2 sections are graded separately. Of course, there are always exceptions, and some darker Western beaver fit well into grades of Eastern beaver and vice versa. Those exceptions are addressed later in the grading process, and we will look at any other differences used in grading Western beaver. Next, the pelts are sized. As long as most of us can remember, the fur grader carried his ruler and each pelt was measured first widthwise and then lengthwise, and totaled for the size in 5-inch increments, supers to cubs. All beaver were bought in this country this way, and there were always arguments about measuring the nose. Should you measure at a 45 or should you measure at a straight 90? Nowadays, all sizing is done by computer on a light table. The table measures the square inches and converts it to the grade. Watch closely how the system works and what all is measured. Pay close attention to the panel in the upper right corner. The barcode is scanned, then the pelt placed on the table. The square inches are calculated and converted into size, which is read by the technician, and then placed in the proper bin. Meanwhile, all the information is recorded in the shipper's account. We all refer to the process of sorting the beaver as grading, but there are really 3 distinct steps and characteristics of the pelts that are looked at by the graders, and each has a separate term. One exception to this is Western beaver.
When we grade beaver, we're grading the leather first because that's where most of the defects can be found. But after grading the leather, we flip the beaver pelt over and we look at to see whether or not there are any damages or defects to the fur side. The next thing we do after grading the beaver pelt is that we weigh it. And what that does is that we're looking for the density or the resistance of our hand going through the underfur. Basically the 2 weights we're looking for is a heavy beaver as opposed to a semi-heavy beaver. The heavy beavers are primarily used for shearing. They can get more depth to the underfur as opposed to the semi-heavy beaver where they have to have a shorter shear. The last inspection of the fur, what we do is that we color it. And in Eastern beaver we have 3 colors, and in Western beaver we have 4 colors. Do not weigh Western beaver. A Western beaver's underfur is what we call in grading terms mushy. It does not have the strength of the underfur like an Eastern beaver's.
Once the pelts are sized, they are presented leather up and pre-sorted by defects. This is done by the technical staff. They'll make 4 piles based solely on defects in the leather.
The first thing that we're looking for when we grade a beaver pelt are the defects on the leather. These can range from bite marks, sew holes, bullet holes, trap marks, snares, things like that.
First pile are the ones that have no defects, clean skins. This pile includes skins that are fully prime and slaty in color. Second pile are clean but blue skins, silkies. Third pile are ones that have some very small damage and again, may be prime and are called slights, SLT, and slight damages, both prime and blue. Slight damage is defined as a pelt that has more obvious defects, i.e. scars, small bite marks, open holes, etc. Fourth pile is damaged, pelts both prime and blue. This includes all other pelts. After the initial pre-sort, each of these piles will be gone through separately by a senior grader one at a time, leaving the damages for last. This time through, he will look at the leather again to reaffirm it is the proper grade, reaffirm the size, if any question, then turn the pelt over, and look for any rubs in the fur, trap damage, clips, mud, or heavy greases, blood, anything that damages the natural flow of the fur. Hence the importance of cleaning and drumming your fur. According to what he sees for damage or imperfections, these pelts are select or first quality, or they may be moved down to slight or slight damage. Both slight and slight damage grades can be a combination of leather side or fur side defects in the pelt, and depending on the extent of the damage, will either become slights or ones. The next thing the grader looks for is color, and there are 3 colors in Eastern Beaver: extra dark, dark brown, and brown.
When we color Eastern Beaver, we color them into 3 shades, color A, B, C. The A color is the extra dark, the B is dark, and the C color is brown. And when we color beaver, is that we take a middle color, in this case the B color, and anything darker than this color will go into A color. Anything paler than the B color we throw into or put into a C color.
Western beaver are broken out into 5 colors: extra dark, dark, brown, pale, extra pale, and red rims.
The colors in the Western assortment are dark brown, brown, pale, and extra pale. Those colors have a relatively clear flank. There are also beaver with a reddish tone that we pull out. One we call a Clarity 4, which is a slate reddish tone in the flank area, and also what we call a Clarity 8, which is a distinct red rim around the beaver.
These are all broken out in the same time. He is grading for fur side defects. So now he has established 6 piles of graded and damaged by color. At this point, he will also grade for density and depth of the underfur. There are 3 grades of underfur: heavy, semi-heavy, and silky or flat. He'll do this by feeling the density of the fur in the middle of the back to the back of the head. This is the last place to prime up on beaver, and if it's good here, the rest of the pelt will be good.
When rubbing your hand, you take your hand and you go from there to the back of the beaver's ears here, because the last place where beaver primes up is right at the back of the head here. So this is how you weight your beaver.
The grader's years of experience can make this judgment in seconds just by the resistance of the fur he's feeling. Sometimes that line between heavy and semi is pretty fine. When you're handling your pelts, you want to make sure that you're aware of the importance of keeping this area thick and full, as it naturally occurs on the beaver, and as clean as it possibly can be. Don't think for a second that graders aren't concerned with dirty fur. They are.
Negatively, the first thing that we see that catches our attention are poorly handled beaver pelts. And see them with primarily the major problem is mud caked in the fur.
The differences between heavy and semi are very important. One of the more traditional markets for beaver is for shearing. The longer the underfur, the higher it can be sheared. In very cold climates, this length is critical. These heavy grades of beaver always bring the best prices. Except for badly damaged pelts, heavy and semi-heavy grades are suitable for shearing. Silky grades, fall beaver, are not. Most heavy beaver come from the northern states and Canadian provinces. It is not a function of each year's temperatures, but a long-term genetic adaptation. The density of the underfur is in the genetics, and that gene pool is located in northern areas. Semi-heavies are usually from northern Atlantic states across the middle of the U.S. Silkies are usually fall, late spring beaver and southern beaver, and is what is used in most natural beaver garments. For someone new to understanding how their beaver are graded, the process can be very confusing, just because of the process used defining those grades. We have designed the following flowchart to make the process hopefully simpler to follow and understand. The first step in the grading process is separating the pelts into two sections, eastern and western. This is done by where they were harvested. Next, they are broken out into sizes. Then, each size grade is broken into 4 piles according to the condition and primeness of the leather. The first pile, clean and slaty, is made of fully prime and slightly blue or slaty colored leather with no scars or damage. The second pile is blue or early but clean leather with no damage or scars. The third pile is slights and slight damages. This pile is prime leather with imperfections, small holes, and scars. Last is the damaged pelts. In this pile, the damage is very obvious or the imperfections extensive and the leather can be either prime or blue. Now, each pile is gone over again. The clean and slaty pile is checked for fur density or weighed for damage to the fur. Any beaver in this first pile found to have damage or imperfections on the fur side are moved over to either the pile of slight damaged or over to damage depending on the extent and severity of the damage. If there is no damage, these pelts are put in heavy, semi-heavy, or silky pile, the heavies and semis, and graded as selects or 1. This grade will make up about 15% of the total number of beaver in a collection. The silkies are graded as 1, 2, colored and integrated into the second pile along with the blue clean pelts. The next pile, the blue clean, are now sorted by fur quality. They are not weighed because as silkies, they have no underfur and placed in an appropriate grade. The first grade, if silkies 1, 2, make up about 15 to 18% of the collection. The third pile, slights and slight damages, are now fur side graded and weighed. Any pelts with excessive fur side damage are moved over to the damaged pile. The others will be graded either slights or slight damage depending on the severity of the combination of leather and fur side damage. The slights are weighed, broken out into heavies and semis, and colored. The slight damages are broken into a combination of heavies and semis, and these are graded as shearable, and the rest, which are graded as non-shearable, and then colored. These two grades, slights and slight damages, will make up about 40 to 45% of the collection. The last pile is the damages. These are broken out into 4 grades depending on the severity of the damage. The first, damage 1, is a mix of heavies and semis, and are all shearable quality. This is what is used for making felt, hatters. The second grade is also a mix of heavies and semis, but badly damaged. Some pelts in this grade are also suitable for felt making. The last 2 grades are the poorest quality and have very limited, if any, uses. The damaged grades will make up 25% of the beaver collection, and it is our intent with this DVD to help trappers reduce that to under 10%. Everyone benefits with quality. The western beaver are graded along the same lines as the easterns, and there's usually a pretty even split in the volume of each on any given sale, although the percentage of Section 3 beaver is higher for the westerns. The 2 grading exceptions for western beaver are that they are not weighed or broken out into heavies, semis, or silkies, and there are 5 colors for the westerns: dark brown, brown, pale, extra pale, and red rims. The red rims are then broken out into Clarity 4, which is an overall red tone to the fur, and a Clarity 8, which is a defined red rim around the pelt. This was a simplified look at the grade designation for a pretty straightforward beaver. So now, let's look at some of the more finite grade breakdowns. When the grader goes through the second of the original piles, the clean skins and the blue skin pile, one of the density grades is called silkies. These are skins of select or good quality based on the leather, but lack the fur depth. These are the mid-fall and mid-spring beaver and will be graded as 1 and 2s.
The first and second is the first non-shearing quality beaver. These beaver are usually early caught, probably mid-November, and they are well covered but lack density in the underfur, but they are still free of imperfections. The leather is blue in color, indicating that it was caught early.
The second grade of these is 2. These are very early fall or late spring beaver. Neither of these grades are shearing quality.
The next quality grade is a second. The second is a very early caught beaver. The underfur is very loose, poor coverage, and blue leather. We also allow some very small imperfections in this grade. The next grade is a third. This beaver is very early caught, usually summer caught. It's very flat, very loose, very limited guard hair, very limited underfur. And the leather is usually very black, indicating it was very early caught. The main use for a beaver of this type is for trimming, for hats, and for long-haired garments.
This grade designation addresses the primeness. The next piece to the puzzle is to understand that the graders take each of the original piles and start to examine the first side of the pelt. It may have so many defects that it drops the pelt entirely out of the original pile, which was based solely on the leather quality, to a lower one. As an example, a clean skin, pile 1, having so many rubs on the fur side it becomes a slight damage. So, the point is, the beaver in the 4 original piles are judged on the leather. As the fur is further examined, it can remain in the original pile or move to a lower quality pile. It cannot increase in grade. The bottom line is that the appearance and quality of the leather is the basis in which the grading process is built, and all other qualities of the pelt flow down from there. Slights and slight damages, pile number 3. These are now gone through, colored, fur side graded. Slights and slight damages A. These are shearable quality, heavies and semis, that will require minor repairs.
The next quality is a slight. A slight is a beaver of select or first quality, but has a minor imperfection that results in minimal repair to the skin, but it is still a very shearable skin. Slight damaged A will have more imperfections than a slight. The imperfections can be holes, scars, bites, or rubs on the fur.
Or a slight damage B. These are non-shearable quality.
The next quality grade is a slight damaged B, SDB. The slight damaged B is a beaver of first and second or second quality with imperfections the same as a slight damaged A. So it's a looser beaver.
The last of the 4 piles are the damages and are a mixture of Western and Easterns. They are not broken out into geographical sections. All pelts in this pile are considered Section 3. These have significant damage or imperfections to the leather side of the fur, and their use is limited. When the grader works his way through the 4th pile, he is really only concerned with the severity of the damage and the weight, the density of the fur. Damaged pelts are not colored, and there are 4 grades.
The next section is Section 3, which contains beavers of inferior quality and more imperfections. The beavers in Section 3 are limited to hatters, novelties, and pieces. They are rarely used for garments because of the amount of damage that has to be repaired. Beavers in Section 1 are separated Eastern and Western. So when we come to Section 3, the Eastern and Western beaver are combined in the same quality grades. The first grade in Section 3 is called Damaged Good, or DG1. It will be of select or first quality, but will have imperfections that result in 10% loss to the beaver pelt.
Damaged good, or DG1. These are shearable quality pelts. The fur is either heavy or semi-heavy, but up to 10% of the fur in the leather is damaged. This grade is used in the felting process. Damaged average, DG2. These are shearable pelts with up to 25% damage to the fur or leather, or maybe 1 and 2 quality. Silkies, fall beaver. Some of the lots in this grade are also suitable for felting if the underfur is of shearable quality. Damaged poor, or DG3. These include all weights of pelts, heavies, semis, and silkies with excessive damage, selects 1 and 1 and 2s.
The last grade in this section is a 4th. This beaver is usually very early caught, has no commercial value, and should not be shipped to the auction.
Let's take a few minutes and look at some of these problems. We're going to break this out into 2 sections: damages or grades that the harvester has some control over, and those that occur naturally. First and foremost is timing your harvest. As we all know, the best beaver for shearing quality come from the north and in midwinter. At present, there is limited or no market for early caught pelts or silkies, although this does change depending on fashion trends. The only real solid market is for prime heavies and semi-heavies. If you live in an area that produces a heavy beaver, wait to harvest your beaver when they are at their best. Fall harvest is a poor use of very valuable resources. In areas that only produce silkies, it's good management to wait until they are fully prime. Handling beaver is a lot of work. Maximize your efforts. Let's take a look at the priming sequence. Early beavers are easy. They're blue and harvested way too early.
The beaver I have here, these are what we call very early. I would suspect these would be taken in August or September. They're very early. That is characterized by very blue leather. And on the fur side, which I'm going to show you very quickly, is that the underfur and the top hairs have not developed the way they should.
October beaver is still too early for the current market demand.
We still have a dark back, but the flanks and the bellies are starting to lighten up. We end up with either what we call seconds or a fall beaver, which we call a silky, which is a very flat beaver with no underfur development, or a ones and seconds silky, which is a fall beaver.
Late November beaver are priming quickly.
This is a typical late fall beaver where the backs are starting to get a little lighter in color and the flanks are now really starting to lighten up. There's a very good example here of what I'm saying about the back, still on the bluish side, lightening up in color, and the flanks and bellies prime.
These will grade as 1 part 2s, or 3 depending on the damage. Now, we are into the mid-December beaver.
Beaver I'm showing you here are beaver which have been trapped in the very, very late fall or winter, early winter to winter type beaver. The back is starting to become very, very light in color. Again, everything is starting to prime up there. Again, the flanks, the rump, and the bellies have all primed up. These are good quality beaver.
Late December and midwinter pelts are the best time to harvest.
This is a fully primed beaver. The back is all primed up, the head is all primed up, and these are what we considered, provided that we don't have any defects on the leather or the fur side, we end up calling these select quality beaver. Everything is completely white or a creamy color. All the fur which has to have primed up has primed up.
Late winter and early spring.
Shedding pattern of a beaver after it goes from prime to off prime. And where a beaver usually starts to go off prime, right behind the front legs, and the more off prime it goes, the more it creeps down along the flanks. It's just this grayish type shadow, which is off to either side of the back. These are getting very dark. And when you start seeing it this bad, you put this into a slight damage. Another example here of a beaver going off prime. The gray shadow area is in here, either side of the front portion of the beaver.
This is a good indication that it's time to stop harvesting.
Same pattern here. Do you see this grayish pattern all the way down this beaver? The back is still a little on the prime side, but it is going off prime as well. This is a late spring beaver. Again, into slight damage or a damaged quality.
These pelts are harvested way too late in the spring. Even though you're not seeing any bite damage, the pelts are way past prime.
This is very late spring beaver, and immediately when we see this, these invariably go into a damage. The whole beaver pelt here is now gone well off prime, and when you see on this beaver, everything has gone blue.
With a little practice, every trapper should be able to grade his beaver by primeness and know when to start and stop his harvesting activities, depending on the market demand. We have already seen how improper trap setting affects the value. Let's get some specifics.
This is where an in-place conibear has affected the grade of this beaver pelt. The dog of the conibear has gone right down into the underfur. This is fall beaver with bite damage after the beaver's been dead.
Protect the beaver you catch. Set so they drop in deep water and other beaver won't bite them. And stop trapping early in the spring before the fighting begins. And snares. This one is common sense. Snares should never be set if the beaver can't be drowned. To say nothing of the humane aspects, use the proper traps and set them right.
Once again, snared beaver, we know right away that this beaver did not drown. We know right away that if we see blood hemorrhaging on the leather side, that we're going to see damage to the underfur on the fur side. And there's a very good case right here of a beaver fighting his snare.
Wash and clean your catch. This one is a no-brainer and a very easy fix.
All right, this is the major problem that we see in improperly handled beaver. And as a beaver trapper and a beaver grader, I find this absolutely inexcusable for a trapper to handle beaver like this. This is all caked with mud. This is very easy. I know where this beaver goes in terms of what the grade it should be, but I am not going to put it in a grade where you've got other people who've handled their beaver well. We cannot get our hand in to weigh this beaver in the underfur because it's caked with dirt. Again, you're trying to package a piece of fur to impress the fur grader.
Tend your traps often and skin your catch quickly. Makes no sense to let your catch taint and the fur slip.
This is a taint caused by not pelting the beaver pelt soon enough. So what you see there is that the guard hair and the underfur slip out. Yeah, this is an example of a beaver which has been left in the water too long. The red which you see on the bellies and the greenness of this whole pelt indicates that this beaver is starting to rot. I mean, it has not been pelted soon enough. Beaver pelt which has been left in the water way too long, and the flanks are starting to go that greeny look to it, which is rot. This is an example of a beaver here which has been in the water way too long.
Keep your beam clean and degreased.
When you're fleshing your beaver on a beam, is it make sure that your beam is always clean and free of grease. This is another example of trappers not wiping down their fleshing beam when they're fleshing a beaver. The grease has gotten right into the underfur and has caked everything. And there's absolutely ruining this pelt. This is a very easy problem to fix.
If you drum your fur, do it before you flesh. Be sure to scrape all the sawdust off the pelt when you board it.
Beaver pelts that come to us that are covered with sawdust like this are very hard to grade. So consequently, we can't give you a proper grade. We cannot read the leather. This beaver pelt should be drummed before it's fleshed.
Brush out all the burrs and snags. Take time around the nipples and skin carefully.
These are knife cuts, which we call false knife cuts. And this is caused by the trapper cutting too deeply into the skin.
Flesh clean and dry cool with lots of air movement.
We often see extensive hair slip on beaver because of improper drying conditions. The beaver that I'm showing you here has been dried way too close to a very intense heat source. Consequently, it's not dried the fur, but it's actually burnt the leather.
Borax is not necessary and can cause problems for the fur dressers.
These pelts have been treated with borax. Some trappers think it helps with the drying process. If a beaver's properly handled, properly cleaned, it doesn't need any borax to speed up the drying. Also, the borax can affect the dressing process. If there's too much left on it, it changes the pH of the solution, and it may affect all of the pelts in a batch in the dressing process.
Sew or close any holes.
When you have holes like this, and I've got a series of examples here, it's much better to your advantage to sew them and not nail them. This is inexcusable. All what you had to do here was either nail it, and in my case here, you should have sewn that. Right now, this is a slight damage. If you had nailed it closed, or in my case, what I suggest is sew it. This would have been a VSL or a slate. He's lost a lot of money because of that. The trapper has done a wonderful job of handling this beaver. Unfortunately, it's a damaged beaver. To sew all these little holes is a waste of time because this is a damaged beaver.
Make sure the pelts are totally dry before they come off the boards. Even storing it in an area of high humidity or wet, rainy weather will re-wet the pelt.
This beaver has been taken off the board while it's frozen.
And store your pelts properly and away from bugs.
This is a very poorly damaged beaver. This is a fourth quality beaver caused by beetle damage, which we call dermestid beetles. This is a stale beaver. We see a fair amount of this, and basically what the real problem is that you're not storing the beaver correctly. This is very easy to solve, is that when you're boarding a beaver, don't leave it out where you can have dry summer conditions.
These are all damages or problems that are directly under the control of the trapper or the fur handler. Hard to believe so much of this low-quality fur ends up on the market each year. Every trapper should strive to ship the best quality, best-handled fur they can produce. This is how we build and strengthen a future market for our fur. Poor quality costs everyone money. Now, let's take a look at damages that are beyond the control of the fur handler, those occurring naturally. Clips. These are caused by the beaver biting at themselves, either biting at parasites in their fur, and is a straight cut of the underfur caused by their teeth.
This is a western beaver because of its paleness, but I'm going to just show you there are a number of clips in this particular beaver. There's one there, there's one there, one there, and if you look carefully, see here, these are clips on the fur side.
Scars. These are caused by natural fighting between beaver, particularly by the traveling males in the spring. Blemishes. Anytime you have black on the hide side of the pelt, this is an area of unprimed fur for shearing. These show up as irregularities in the underfur and must be repaired if possible, or cannot be used in other cases.
Blemishes. This is unprimed fur and underfur and top hair. Again, we really don't know, but it is unprimed fur. But they definitely do affect the grade of a beaver.
Rubs. These are caused by objects in the environment the beaver lives in, diving under logs, in and out of root systems, and so on. Parasites. They come in several different forms. Some have an effect on the fur, others don't.
This is another infection what we see in a beaver. These have healed up. So I don't know whether or not this is something. I suspect that the infection takes place in the summertime, the life cycle of whatever this parasite is, and it does affect the primeness of the beaver. What you end up seeing here, it's almost like a little warble fly bite. Black hairs you see here, that is unprimed fur. This is a parasitic infection. When we do see it, the extension of the infection of this is usually quite severe, like it is on here.
Scratches and claw marks. Bites are not the only result for a beaver interaction.
We see this on beaver quite frequently. We suspect that it's scratching from other beaver because of the claw marks that we suspect that's what they are. And it ranges from very, very few scratch marks to it can be quite extensive.
And mites.
I've been told that these are caused by mites. And here they have a tendency to be in a round circle.
NAFA's graders are highly trained and highly skilled judges of the quality of your pelts. There is very little chance that they're going to miss any poor handling practices. Better handling puts money in your pocket. Take the time to do it well. When the grading is finished, there may be 100,000 beaver broken out into all the grades. It would be impossible for the buyers to go through all the beaver in each grade, so a representative sample is selected from each grade, usually by the grader that graded those pelts. They are put together into a show lot, usually of 10 to 20 pelts. These are placed on display for the buyers to examine. The integrity of the grade is very important. Buyers expect the show lot to be totally consistent with all the beaver in that grade. If they aren't, the buyer has a right to bring claim against the company. All the lots are listed in the catalog so the buyers can see how many total pelts are available in each lot and how the lots are broken into the strings, usually 250 to 400 pelts in a string. These numbers are much more in line with the number of pelts used in the manufacturing process, and that buyer might be interested in buying. All buyers are looking for a specific quality depending on their location, climate, and customers. Nadez is from Siberia. She and her mother have 5 fur salons. They are interested in the very best shearing quality beaver because of the climate in that part of Russia.
We live in Siberia. We live in the most cold place in Russia. almost 9 months of winter and 3 months of summer. Every woman in our city needs fur coat. The best fur for winter, for Siberian winter, is beaver and otter. We came to NAFA to choose ourselves the best of the best quality beaver, the best of the best. We are buying the most expensive beaver skins. We are buying skins of beaver select and super select. Super select is top lot, it's small amount skin, and select. Also, we are buying eastern beavers because quality of these beavers is much better than western. But the beginning of the changing hair is the belly. So beaver, we know that beaver begin changing hairs from belly to back. And when we are looking at the skin, first of all we are looking at the back. When our manufacturers makes fur coat, they take all the blanket and make it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 if it has hood. So for a fur coat we take about 8 or 10 skins. They put, for example, on the back all the skin here is, and in the middle is the back of the beaver, and the back of the beaver is exactly on the back of the person. While dressing we shear skin high as about 13 millimeters. 13 millimeters is enough warmness for fur coat, but 13 millimeters we can shear only heavy skins, only perfect under fur, because if the skin is not grown up enough, if the skin catch early, on the back we can't shear it 13 millimeters. We should shear it smaller, about 8 millimeters, and that's why the coat is not so warm. All we know that every woman wants to look perfect, and no one lady likes imperfection on her fur coats. Skin should be perfect. Skin shouldn't have any scars. I understand that beaver is wild animal, they are fighting, but scars is, as less scars skin has, as the better it's useful for fur coats. And I feel very pity when I see a lot of beaver skins with damages beaver skins, with imperfection which I could buy for fur coats, and I do not know how to use it. Mostly we are buying skins exactly size extra large and large. And also for fur coats, the best of the best bestly fits size of skins is XL and large, extra large and large. The big blankets, 2XL or 3XL, is nice also, but they are not have such heavy under fur as skins size XL and large. Beaver is a wild animal. I understand that they have some imperfection, natural imperfection, parasites or scars from natural fightings. But I kindly ask all the trappers, do his best to make the skin very carefully, do his job very properly, to avoid a lot of new problems. The beaver skin has enough his own wild problems, so you should do your best to make skin as perfect as you could. You should catch beaver as soon as possible, without marks of traps, because the marks of traps sometimes while dressing, its skin breaks on this place, so it makes some troubles. So I kindly ask you, do your best to make the skin without new imperfections, without scars. You should, please, make it carefully.
The newest market for beaver, China, has a completely different grade and quality of pelts they are interested in. But as you heard, it is the best grades and best handled pelts that catch their eye.
My name is Lumen Yao. I'm a director of Studio NAFA. This gentleman's name is Li Dongdong. He's coming from China. So the question will be what kind of features he is looking for when he's buying the beavers. 情况会更糟一些。
对，情况会糟。
So on the leather side, he's looking for whether the condition of those holes. If he will see the little holes on the leather side right now, after the dressing in China, probably the condition will get worse. So this will be the point he always pays special attention to. So the sizes most of the time will be XL, double XL, triple XL. 尽量避免。So for him, he's looking for the skins try to be perfect. So for our trappers, if they can pay special attention to avoid like little holes, try to avoid those. So that would be better to serve his buying purpose.
One of the real keys to the survival of trapping is the development and maintenance of strong, viable markets for our fur. NAFA understands that and, as a part of our commitment, spends a great deal of time working with buyers to introduce them to beaver, its uses, and the grading system, and can be assured of purchasing the best quality pelts that will fit their needs. These workshops are held in conjunction with every auction and at locations all over the world for interested buyers and designers.
The section that we handle is a western section
Это
beaver,
западная секция.
and this comes from the western part of Canada and the western part of the United
Из
States.
западной части Канады или Штатов.
The main difference is the texture of the hair and also the color.
Главное различие между западной и восточной – это текстура волоса и цвета.
Sections will be a few more imperfections, but again, quality will be shearable quality.
Еще смотрите, он дальше показывает для стрижки пригодные шкурки, но чуть-чуть больше брака будет. Понимаете, есть очень легкие повреждения. Это легкие повреждения.
These are actually bite marks.
Вот это закусы, шрамы.
Lots of trappers think that shipping their early caught and low-quality pelts is still fine, that they'll find a home as what we call hatters for making felt. That couldn't be farther from the truth. Hatters are not low-quality early pelts. They are sheared for the underfur. Underfur is what is used to make felt. Only heavy and semi-heavy winter-caught beaver are suitable for that purpose.
What we look for in the beaver in the grading is it can be damaged beaver because that helps keep the price level lower. However, we want the density of the fur, the sizes from the blanket down to and including a large medium. And our main concern is the density of the fur. Here we have a damaged one large, and they can be mixed colors, various damages, as long as the resistance of the fur, the density is there for the hatter business. They all have various damages, but they all have the heavy quality underfur. And they're generally late fall and into winter qualities. By late spring, when the bad rubs are coming in and the shedding is starting, there's no interest. This is a very early skin. This is maybe a nuisance beaver taken in September, October. That, you know, it's just
No value.
no value. You know, this just takes up time, labor, cost expense at any auction house, storage problems. They cannot market this. You can see by the blue leather, it's very early caught. This grade is, lots of blue leather, early caught, not for the felting industry. Here we have the damaged one, good quality, and you can certainly see the difference. We've got a heavy quality beaver here, a lot of resistance, a lot of good, useful fur for the hatting industry. And this is the main grade that we would prefer to buy. Top end heavy goods for us, and it's the industry, whether that's on a blanket or a size large, doesn't matter. This is again what we want. I'm almost losing my finger tops in this beaver. Beautiful stuff. Is the top grade, but they are all prime skins. This is winter goods, and they do have defects, but they're fine goods for the hatter felter industry. And again, here's another one, a different color. That doesn't matter. It's always the thickness of the fur, the density of the fur. Now we're getting into a grade that's usually referred to by the NAFA operation as a damaged 2, and this is generally in our minds and graders' minds, we think of this as a semi. Of course, we still are always operating in a damaged grade, but Now we're getting some density. And you can see the heaviness. It's harder for me to push my hands or the grade through the fur. And this is the final grade in the third section beaver. And this often is the flat, bad damage, tainted skins, all lumped under one, and referred to generally as 3s and 4s. And this is of no value also to the felting industry. First sign, bad rub, blue leather, early skins. Again, early fall, late spring, no values.
The real truth is that in the markets we have now, early and late caught pelts have no value or use in the garment or hat manufacturing industry. Remember, we stressed harvesting to the market demands. After the buyers inspected the show lots and compared the ones they are interested in to the lot listings in the catalog, they settle on the quality of the lots they want and the number of pelts. All this information is marked in their catalogs for reference in the auction room. When the auction begins, the very first lot of beaver is the top lot. This is a select number of pelts, usually 10 to 20 of the very best beaver in the collection. For a trapper to have one of his pelts in the top lot is a huge honor. It not only has to have the exceptional fur quality and color, the handling must be flawless. When you think about the odds of having 100,000 beaver on a sale and a trapper having one that's the very best out of all of them, it's pretty amazing. The top lot also benefits the buyers, along with the status of purchasing the very best beaver North America has to offer. NAFA provides a wide range of programs to help the buyers promote not only the pelts in the top lot, but other pelts they may purchase on the sale. Purchasing the top lot is also very prestigious for buyers. After the excitement of the top lot, it's down to business as the auctioneer goes through the catalog by lots. He sets a starting price. This is predetermined by the company and is reflective of the current market conditions. As the buyers bid, there are several lots of the same size, grade, and color. This is called a string, and if they bid successfully on the first lot in the string, they have the right of first refusal to purchase all the lots in that string, unless they are upped by another buyer. The buyer can also drop his bid by one increment in the string, and if no one bids more, then he can purchase the rest of the string at the lower price. That's why a shipper may have two pelts of identical grade, but receive less for one than the other. It all depends on which lots they are in. Now that a lot of trappers have access to the live auction via the internet, some of the terms that show on the sale results may be a little confusing. As the sale unfolds, terms bought back and unsold are sometimes seen on certain lots. These terms are used interchangeably and mean basically the same thing. Bought back is used in the sales results if you watch the live auction, and unsold is what appears on your final sales report. What they do mean is that the price in the room or price offered was not within the acceptable margin of the pre-sale valuation placed on the pelts. This value is assigned by senior management who evaluates the present markets and the prices received for similar goods elsewhere in the industry. Rather than lower the asking price below those levels, the pelts are bought back or unsold. The term withdrawn refers to dealer lots that have minimums that are above the current values for the sale, so these lots are withdrawn from the catalog. Private treaty is a sale that takes place after the pelts have been offered. The pelts that are available did not meet the minimum price, and the lot was bought back. After the sale, for some reason, a buyer decides he would like those pelts. Either he wasn't successful bidding on the other lots, or needs more pelts than he was able to buy in the room. He pays a visit to the private treaty department to see what is available. Private treaty is not a bargain sale of pelts. The price level was already established in the auction room. Private treaty sales only take place after the goods have been offered and a price established. That's why, if you are following the sale, some lots with your pelts in may be bought back on the sale day but show up as sold 2 to 3 days later when you check your sales report.